All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is Matthew Duplantis at the Weather Service here in Slidell. I'm showing a couple of minutes after 2. We're going to go ahead and get started, talk about the severe weather threat that we have for tonight into tomorrow, and touch on Wednesday as well. So let's go ahead and get started. There is a threat for damaging winds and a few tornadoes. That's going to be the primary threats for what we're going to see initially with as the line comes through with this system. For tomorrow morning, it's going to happen. I'll have slides here in a minute that show the timing of it, but it's going to be roughly after midnight, lasting through Tuesday morning. Coupled with this event, we're also going to see the chance for some heavy rainfall. That's going to show a threat for a certain area of our forecast area, and we'll have that depicted here too. Unfortunately, this will probably affect the morning commute for a lot of areas on a Tuesday morning. So be mindful of that. And then we'll touch on that chance for severe weather for Wednesday afternoon. So the reason why we have a day 1 outlook for today and a day 2 for tomorrow is because our outlooks cross 7 a.m. They last for 7 a.m. through 7 a.m. So not midnight to midnight. So that's why we have this particular outlook. And if you were following along with our tweets or posts or products or anything that we've been sending out, that's why it's crossing that 7 a.m. threshold. So this will be ongoing, the threats that you're going to see ongoing, and they're going to be roughly more towards after midnight, maybe more towards 4 a.m. or so, 3 to 4 a.m. coming into that far northwestern portions of our forecast area there into southwest Mississippi and the far central portions of Louisiana there. Then this is where we're going to see the initial threat from damaging winds, possibly a few tornadoes. We could see damage to trees, homes, power lines down, that sort of thing. And you can see from going across from the green to our southern parts of our coastal areas all the way up to that southwest portion of Mississippi. That's the higher threat area where we're going to see the greatest risk from those damaging winds and tornadoes. So here's an outlook that just shows the risk from the damaging winds. That's probably going to be your greatest threat along with those isolated tornadoes. So like the Macomb area, you could possibly see some significant winds in excess of 70 miles per hour, that sort of thing. Greatest damaging wind gusts from in that area. And the tornado threat will be roughly that general area as well. Initially, you're going to have a chance for some excessive rainfall. The rain that falls in this particular time frame will be at night. It'll be without daylight, so we could see some initial ponding of water on roadways and low drainage areas that that would probably be prone to flooding. It's initially going to fill up during that time frame, and then it's going to progress into the daytime. So here's the timing. This is what we're thinking. This is for Tuesday, and I want to caveat this slide with this is when we're likely going to see the onset of impacts, not the duration. And this is going to when you first could see it. So this is for Tuesday morning. We're thinking that 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. time frame for that southwestern Mississippi, far northwestern portions of southeast Louisiana, and then progressing southeastward. And I'll have a simulation, a depiction of what we think the radar will look like. And you'll see from that simulation in a little bit why we've kind of staggered this timing the way that we have. And the initial onset for the coastal regions, far southeastern Louisiana, it's later on in the morning, maybe even towards that afternoon time frame, but definitely everyone will see some portion of this. So like I said, since we're crossing that 7 a.m. time frame, that's why the severe weather outlook for here, we went from 1 and it's kind of pivoting to this one. So since it's crossing that 7 a.m. threshold, that threat area will just persist inward into the next day. And that's why you've got this orange enhanced risk, 3 out of 5 risk for that far northeastern part of our area from Macomb, northeast of Hammond, and just north of the coastal sections of coastal Mississippi. So you're still going to see the damaging wind gusts. You're still going to see the threat from possibly a few tornadoes, some isolated tornadoes. So that's where you're going to see the damaging winds that'll cause damage to trees, power lines, possibly even to homes. But that's where why that threat crosses over into that next day. Now we're also going to have a threat. This is more towards the daybreak hour, daybreak time into to roughly about noon or so. I'll show you here in a minute where we've actually issued a flood watch. But this is where the greatest risk area where we think you could see some excessive rainfall, because as the system pushes through, you'll have that initial line of thunderstorms that bring a severe risk. And like I said, I'll show you in the simulation in a minute. We think the southern edge of that system as it comes through will progress much slower. So the eastern push of this system will be greater than the southerly push, and that's what's going to lead to the excessive rainfall. And we just updated this particular graphic. Had a different one. You may have seen it in your slides. It's a little bit different. We kind of pushed back those rain totals into that first tier of Southwest Mississippi and that first northern tier of the Florida parishes. So that's where the flood watch will be, but this is where we expect average rainfall rates or average rainfall to be about 2 to 3 inches with some locally higher amounts. And where you get those local higher amounts, you're going to see the ponding of water on roadways. You're going to see the flooding of low-lying, poor drainage areas, that sort of thing. But unfortunately, this is going to affect the morning commute for that general area. And one thing that I'd like to point out here too, because this is the flood watch that will be in effect, we've gone with that 2-tier of counties and parishes there, but depending on how this sets up and how later models show, just know that there's some uncertainty. We may have to extend this watch another row south. So we may have to take it down to the I-10, I-12 corridor, depending on the setup of what we think is going to happen. But right now we're kind of confident that at least these 2 rows of counties and parishes will be affected. And this will likely be during that morning commute. I wanted to really stress that. And the watch will start at 4 a.m. And I know the timing, we had it entering our area at 4 a.m. So as you can see, the heart of this watch is where the heavier rainfall will probably fall, is closer to that daybreak and that late morning on Tuesday morning. So here's that simulation. This is what I wanted to kind of bring your attention to. This is what we expect. The northern extent of this line where it pivots and it's not an east-west portion running, but it's more of a north-south, like along the Mississippi River between Louisiana and Mississippi and northeast Louisiana and western sections of Mississippi. That portion of the line will actually advance faster eastward, whereas this east-west running line of thunderstorms will advance southward slower. And that slowness will bring that or allow that heavy rainfall to pile up in certain areas. So I know this particular model run makes it kind of look like it's going to go quicker, but we've had more that show it maybe even kind of slowing down as it approaches I-10 or I-12. But the general severe weather threat will be this portion of the line that's advancing more from west to east. So that's where the severe weather threat will be, and this east-west running line will be where the flood threat will be. And yes, I made a little caveat on this slide that I know in your PDF or in your particular slides that I sent you, you may not be seeing this animation as I'm talking about it right now and showing it live. But on our YouTube channel, when we transfer this over, you'll be able to see this simulation. And this is, I just wanted to touch on this really quick. I know the focus is the severe weather threat for tomorrow morning, but we do have another risk of severe weather for Wednesday. It's not going to be as intense or as what we're thinking this particular event will be, because it's all going to be dependent on how much moisture we get back into the area, how unstable do we get. But just know that the threat right now, there is some risk for Wednesday afternoon into evening. We're just going to have to keep monitoring this particular event for Wednesday, but some uncertainty still exists with it. So let's go over the impacts. We could see damage to homes from the damaging wind gusts and possibly a few tornadoes, down trees, power lines, that sort of thing. The heavy rainfall, wherever it lines up, if it goes over the same areas and repeatedly accumulates in that same area, we could see ponding of roadways and poor drainage, low-lying areas. And unfortunately, like the third bullet says, like I said, it is going to be during the morning commute, wherever it times out to be in that general area where I showed you where that line could be, especially the flood watched areas. That's where we think right now, but it could be expanded further south. So it will affect that timing. Just wanted to let you know that. And we're just going to have to stay tuned for those later updates for that Wednesday.